At Orleans Park School in south-west London, GCSE history results have risen year on year for the last 10 years. 5 years ago, 60% got at least a C. Now it's 80%, and half got an A or an A star. History is the most popular option here, chosen by 60%, twice the national average. Before they start their GCSE course, Year 9s get the chance to feed back to the head of department.
Things you do in the lessons, is there anything else that you've really enjoyed at Key Stage 3, in history or in other lessons, that you'd like us to incorporate a little bit more?
I really like the fact that our teacher used different ways of teaching us, so we never knew what was going to happen and how she's going to introduce new things to us.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you. Anyone else?
I like it when we split up into groups and we both have to argue one side of the story and get points and counter-arguments.
Doing the mysteries is really good because sometimes you think you've got somewhere and then another thing comes in, and so then you have to restart all over again, and then you have to really focus about which it could really be.
Where did you get to with them?
Well, I changed the angle slightly, so I didn't get through to do the peer assessment stuff.
Teachers believe much of the department's success comes from working in close collaboration and sharing resources.
If any of us make any resources, we just put them into a central resource area on the computer, and then everyone can access them, and it just cuts down a lot of workload because we can all use each other's ideas, which is really, really helpful.
Updating lessons is done as a team, though each teacher will add their own distinctive style. Today, they're planning new ways to cover German resistance to the Nazis with their Year 10s.
I think we could probably do some really interesting stuff with the youth opposition. I know we were having... Planning's absolutely crucial to everything we do. Obviously, it underpins all of our teaching. Yeah, and then when you take a topic and you think about how to do it differently this year as opposed to last year, and you change the resources around and maybe add in something new, then that's really exciting, and you really look forward to going in and teaching it. And I've really enjoyed reading about this. And when you read about individuals, it just brings it alive a little bit, and you do remember it much better.
Yeah,
definitely.
So we could keep it very personal, what made Sophie and Hans change. We could
brilliant.
Keep it to that level.
And what we find with those meetings is you can just bounce off ideas from each other, because a teacher gets used to teaching in a certain way, but when you discuss something with somebody else, you just come up with new ideas on how you're going to do things. I mean, have we got time to put something together where we summarise for them all the different groups?
Good idea.
I could do that in Movie Maker.
Yep.
Something just to pull together after they give us some feedback. And then it puts them into context of the other youth groups as well.
Absolutely.
Because in their exam, if they get a question on opposition, as long as they mention one group, they're not like... I mean, they probably won't ask them, why did the White Rose? They wouldn't be that specific. They'll do a general youth opposition. So if they just know one or two names, that's when they're going to get the higher marks.
Having worked out the best way to cover the topic, all 3 teachers will deliver their own version of the lesson to their particular GCSE group.
Come and sit in your normal places. Good. You can just get your books out, please. What we're going to have a look at this morning is how youth opposition developed during World War II. OK, so all I want you to tell me is, what is the connection between these 4 pictures?
If you have a look, I've given you 4 pictures. Any ideas what the connection is?
Just spend, in your mind, 30 seconds just thinking, what do all these images show? What's the connection? Try not to shout out, think first.
Got quite a range of teaching styles within the department, but having said that, even though we're quite different, we do work very closely together in the resources that we produce, and then having produced the resources, we then sort of adapt them to the style that not just suits us best, but also suits the groups that we've got.
Are they with a different group other than the Hitler Youth?
And we do learn from each other, so we will watch each other teach occasionally, just so we can get ideas from each other.
One of the team has provided a set of cards on the White Rose Youth Opposition group that can be used by all 3 teachers.
You are going to then sort out the cards into 2 columns, all right? So on one side, I want you to try and work out the story of Hans and Sophie, see if you can put it chronologically. And on the other side, I want you to find all the factors, all the reasons that made them change from supporting the Nazis to opposing them.
Read through the cards together, so read them to each other, have a look at them. And you've also got in your envelope these two things. You've got two headings: reasons for turning against the Nazis, Hans and Sophie's story. What do you think I want you to do with the cards? Tess?
Put them in the right category.
Yeah, just put them in the right order. If you think they go in both categories, just put them between both of them, OK? If you get a chance, on the purple sheet, answer the first two questions, which are summarise the story of Hans and Sophie and list reasons why they might have become opponents of the Nazis.
Although they're using the same resources, how they're used is up to individual teachers.
Now, each group is obviously going to get the mystery envelope cards, OK? So this is going to be the evidence that you need to solve the mystery. I'm going to give you sort of a tablecloth, which sounds a bit weird, but tablecloth obviously helps you to structure your answers. And I've done this on a giant format, so what you could do as your group, to help each other out as you go along, is you could maybe place the cards in each category so you don't forget, you know, what your train of thought is. So open the cards, make sure you've got them right. There should be green cards in there. There's quite a few of them, so spread them out.
Well, you should be able to find a good 4 reasons why they went against the Nazis. So we'll have a look at them.
During the 1930s, Hans and Sophie were enthusiastic members of the Hitler Youth. That's their story. White Rose graffiti appeared on the street, so that's part of the story. Yeah, that could be either. That's a difficult one.
Just put it there.
Yeah, just put it there. It gives us a better understanding if we read it out and actually categorise it ourselves, rather than it being in a book so we can just read it off and see someone else's view.
Yeah, but
Hey, you need to be writing down the background and the reasons. 5 minutes.
They were members of the White Rose Resistance Group. That's them as well. The Gestapo could not catch them.
The war against Russia was going badly. When they fought in the war, it was going bad, and they had Jewish friends, which they thought, well, we see Jewish people get killed, so that could happen to my friends as well.
Good.
So then that's part of the specific evidence to help them.
OK, so now you've got it laid out like this, which is brilliant, and I know that you've had some discussion time. Let's try and bullet point as we go along now, because you're going to need to feed back in about sort of 5 minutes.
Making sure lessons are geared to the particular needs of the individuals in each class is important to the department.
I mean, in my classroom with my current Year 10 group, I tend to get pupils to work in pairs rather than groups. I only see them in the afternoon or around lunchtime. And I've got a very big group and quite a range of abilities, and I just find it very useful to keep tasks very structured and very tight, with tight time limits, so pupils know exactly what they've got to do and they can't really deviate from that. Last year I had a totally different group and I taught them at a different time of the day, and group work worked brilliantly with them. So it really does depend on the actual group, and that's why it's so great to plan together, but then to make sure that we all do our own thing with the resources.
Do you think that's about them?
The class that I was teaching, I tend to have them to work in pair work, and what I found this year is that the more able are bringing on the less able, so they're sort of working together. They are mixed up, not just in ability, but also on who they'll work with, because there are friendship groups now that you don't necessarily want working with each other sometimes, or sometimes you do, so they're mixed up on that. My other group, which is much smaller, tends to do more sort of 2, 3 or 4 people in a group, and it does vary on your activity.
What kind of role model is that providing? What kind of example is that providing?
They need to stand up against, like, following their father's footsteps.
Absolutely. Harry, do you think that... For me, I like to split them up randomly because I want that whole team spirit factor, so that when we come to do revision and things like that, they don't feel necessarily there are any barriers and they can work with anybody in the class. It's a small class, and so if you end up streaming so soon and they feel that they're not A grade or B grade, I think that would shut them down.
Regular analysis of exam questions and learning how to assess answers is seen as key to the department's success. Once again, the 3 teachers share resources, but adapt them to their own classes.
OK, now on the white sheet, you have got 2 different answers from past pupils to an exam question that you could get on youth opposition to the Nazis. And what we've given you on the yellow sheet is a peer assessment grid. OK, so what I'd like to do, please, all right, examine the mark scheme, look at the answer and underline the parts that you think deserve a mark, and then work out what mark you would give them. And if you get time, if you can put down something that you think went well in that answer or something I needed to add, then that would be fantastic.
There's 4 marks for it. To get the full 4 marks, they've got to name some groups and give reasons why those people resisted to get the full 4 marks. If they just describe the groups and don't really give you any reasons about why they did resist, they're only going to get about 2 marks.
But I want to give you a taster of the type of exam questions you would be having in the exam. Here are other people's answers, OK? Let's see whether we can recognise what makes a good answer. It's only worth 4 marks.
I think when we start peer and self-assessing exam answers, pupils find that very difficult because they just maybe want to write down what they know without giving any analysis, for example, or without looking at where the source comes from and analysing that. So I think by being very clear on what an exam question is looking for, that gives the students a lot of confidence in answering the paper. And it's only once you've established the mark that you can then work out this bit.
Oh, OK. Yes.
Yeah. And also, I mean, to get a level 2, it's got to explain more than one reason.
Yeah, so...
We try and get the pupils to predict what questions are going to come up, because often in an exam, people will see a question and be put off by it, and they've studied it, the phrasing's wrong. So we encourage them to just think, when you go in that exam, there'll be nothing there that we haven't taught you. You've just got to think outside the box and try and work out what they're actually asking you. If you've given them a mark, you've got to say what went well and what could have been better. And then check with whoever's next to you that you've given them the same marks.
I'm doing the how successful were opposition groups within Germany during the war, and that's a 5-mark question. And I think because we're pushed to do higher mark questions, then that forces us to learn more and take in more to get a better result. That's why we get good results in the school. That's why I think.
I'm sort of doing the teacher's job here, so by marking someone else's answer, well, it's like a fake answer, it gives me like sort of an idea of what the teachers are looking for.
OK. Has anyone given it 2? Has anyone given it 4? OK. Barry, why have you given it 4?
Because he described his answer well and went into depth more about it than what the other person did.
OK, gives more than the other person. Lily?
She needs to talk about more, whereas he just talked about lots of different things. He knew loads of information.
OK, so there's more information in that one. It wouldn't matter if the candidate just said one group just mentioned the White Rose, but because they've gone on and explained different reasons why these people opposed the Nazis, that's why they've got the 4 marks.
I'd like you to mark Nathan and Julia's work. It might help you to look at the mark scheme. Have a look at what you've underlined. A key to a good answer is to include evidence, but also keep it relevant.
I think there's a lot of factors that lead to us getting really, really good GCSE results. We do make sure that pupils have a big variety of activities in lessons, but also we do make sure they know how to answer the exam questions.
By the time they get into their exams, they know exactly what's going to come up in terms of the layout of the paper. They're very confident and they just know they can do it. The aim is that when they get in the exam, they're as confident as they possibly can be.
They just don't dare express themselves as we do.
I think we'll get the results because the way we're delivering our subject is a way which they will retain it and they're thinking it through for themselves. I mean, they've got more ownership over the tasks because of the activities, because of the enjoyment factor. And, I mean, they do shape our lessons, I think.